believe.
Sure.
So she'll be able to just watch it back.
Right.
Okay, so the floor is yours then, Sophia.
Right, okay. So hello everyone, thank you so much for coming this afternoon. I've been working with Danny and also Dan to just see if this would assist your team and the people with whom you work. So basically looking at risk management and accident prevention. I really don't want this to be me talking for 40 minutes to everybody at all, because you'll be bored rigid, and also you probably won't get anything out of it or as much. So please make this interactive. Please do ask questions as we go along. Absolutely not a problem. We were at a conference a couple of weeks ago at the Association of British Climbing Walls conference, and we were doing a fairly formal presentation. So we did have questions at the end, but I'm more than happy for you to ask questions as we go along. And I'm going to throw things out at you, and this should be a sort of discussion because this is more for you as a team. Okay. What I'm going to do is I've got the screen up at the moment, so you can all see this with the slides. Excuse me. And my second screen, I'm going to have the PowerPoint so I can see it. So I'm going to rely on Danny to tell me if anyone puts their hand up, or so please just interrupt or what have you if you've got a question, and hopefully it'll all be okay, if that's all right. So if we start, basically today's session is about insurance. So I work for AIM, which is the Activity Industry Mutual, and we provide SSG with your liability cover. We're a mutual, so we're not allowed to call it insurance, but it's essentially the same as insurance. So I manage the mutual, which means I run it basically. I work for a management company, and I work very, very closely with the AIM board. It's a mutual, so it's owned by its members for its members, which means that SSG as a member pays their contribution for the cover, like your insurance premium, into the pot, and then any claims that are have to be paid out all come from that pot up to a certain figure, and beyond that it's backed by supporting insurers. So it's very much a mutual for the members. It's like a cooperative, and we work very closely with members to make sure that we're giving you the best possible service. During the pandemic, we were able to be very flexible with members, and we were able to talk to them about reducing covers and assisting and giving payment holidays and all that kind of stuff. So we were quite different to a conventional insurer, and I think that really helped members. Just a really little bit of background about me. So I've been working with AIM for the past just over 3.5 years. And before that, I was a lawyer for 24 years in private practice. And I acted for insurance companies and large corporates, including companies like Heathrow Airport, and I defended their liability claims. So I've got pretty good experience and knowledge about how to prevent accidents, and then what to do if a claim is made against you, and how you can defend that successfully. So that's basically what today's talk's about, in order to help you. Obviously, incidents happen, and it doesn't necessarily mean anyone is to blame. Accidents happen, and they are accidents, but there will be some incidents and accidents that could be prevented, and I want to discuss with you how we can look at preventing them, and then also how, if there is an incident and somebody makes a claim, how you can then successfully defend that. So I hope that's okay. The slide here just sort of explains that. So what you need to do to tell your insurers, why it's important to tell your insurers about incidents. I'll go into a bit more detail about that. I think the best thing about companies such as SSG is that you all work really closely together. And also that you should have this culture of not being afraid to talk to each other, especially about incidents and near misses, because if you can react to a near miss, you can prevent an accident. And I think it's great if you can have that kind of culture where you can say, look, guys, this happened today. We need to talk about it so that we can prevent issues in the future. I'm sure you do that already, but it is quite important. So then we're going to talk about documentation and its importance, the legal aspect, just to give you an idea about the type of claims that you might have, how we can support you, and then we'll look at lessons learned and what you can do in respect of those. I've put questions there. We can have questions at the end, but please do feel free to interrupt or just ask any questions if you're not sure about anything. This is for you, so please make it as helpful for you as possible. Okay, so just a really quick little bit about AIM. So it's a mutual. I've said a little bit about that already. The cover, so the insurance that we provide is employer's liability, which is the EL, public liability, which is for the activities that you provide for members of the public, visitors, etc. Property, so we cover any buildings or equipment that you have, and professional indemnity. That means if you are providing training or a service or anything, it's a bit like architects, lawyers, dentists, you know, if they're giving a service rather than an actual product, or, you know, that's their type of product, then that's professional indemnity. And we also have a motor scheme as well. The membership community is dedicated to activities, so we cover everything from axe throwing and archery to zorbing and zip wires and everything in between. We've got a whole host of different levels of member. It's owned by its members and operated by us on behalf of the board. Okay. Just very lastly, there was a real need in the industry about 14 years ago for properly priced cover by a company that understood needs, and that when members said, oh, we want to go coasteering or we want to go abseiling, that there are risks involved, obviously, but those risks can be managed. And some conventional insurance companies were very worried about taking over that risk. So that was how AIM was born out. Okay, oops, sorry. So I'm really quickly going to deal with the two types of legal action that you can come up against. My background was very much the civil actions, but I have dealt with some of the criminal actions as well. So at the top of the slide, you'll see the HSE prosecution. These are the criminal aspects. So it's usually when there is a very serious incident or a fatality, and you will find that the HSE will get involved. That's HSE's Health and Safety Executive, and they will want to come and investigate the incident to make sure that another incident of a similar type doesn't occur again. That's basically what they're doing. They're looking for the public interest to make sure that companies have good health and safety standards and that they're not exposing staff in particular and visitors to risk of injury. Obviously, as you know, staff should feel, as an employee, you should feel that you are safe at work and that you can come to work without the risk of an injury or incident. And that's very much what the HSE guidance and statutory requirements are based upon. So an HSE prosecution, or indeed an interview under caution with the police, will follow the criminal procedure, and that involves, if you're found guilty, it involves prison sentence and fines. They are few and far between, so please don't worry about that. The more likely claim that you will come across would be a civil action, which is when you have say you've got a child that comes to you and they fall over, they fall off some equipment and they break their arm. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's anything to do with anything that you've done or the equipment, but you may find that their family brings a claim against the company for compensation, for damages, for money, to compensate them for the injury and any losses that they've had. And those are the type of claims that I used to deal with when I was a lawyer. They usually just have monetary financial implications. There's no prison sentence or fines or anything like that. But obviously, it's really important that you protect your employer, so you protect SSG, and that you make sure that you aren't exposing them and yourself to the risk of any similar types of claims. Right, is everyone okay so far? I can't actually see anyone because I've got my slides up. So Danny.
Sorry, Sophia. Yeah, everybody's all good. Everybody's kind of nodding away.
Okay. Any questions so far? We're all right.
None in the chat box, but I will monitor that, guys, if you want to write anything down. Okay.
All right, perfect. I'll crack on and then we'll get into the bit more interactive stuff. Okay. If I'm going too fast, by the way, someone tell me and I'll slow down. Okay, so accident prevention is key. Proactivity and taking steps to prevent incidents and to prevent accidents and knowing your systems is absolutely critical. It's too late when something's happened to be reactive and to be scrabbling around, technical term, trying to find documents and things like that. So if you're properly organised and you know where everything is and your staff know the procedures and you all know who is involved and who's responsible for X, Y, and Z, then that's going to make life a lot easier. And you'll find that that prevents incidents, not only makes it easier if you have to find the documentation, but it's well run and it shows good health and safety standards. I've said there preparation is key. It is. I'm going to throw this open to you guys now, open to the floor, and say, what kind of things do you do internally as a business? So how do you prepare for health and safety issues that you might have? Do you have regular meetings? Do you have team talks? Do you go to seminars? What kind of things do you do? Anybody?
We have meetings. We have a meeting that we cover all as a team, so all the leadership team. Okay. And we also, obviously, because we're education led as well, we obviously complete risk assessments and share them across the board. So a lot of best practice, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. And I know, is it Lisa who was talking then? Sorry.
Yes, Sophia. Lisa is our senior ops manager for our training department. So very much kind of focused on that element. Great,
thank you. Thanks, Lisa, for that. That's really helpful. I mean, obviously, you know, it's really important that you all talk and you do have these regular meetings so that you can brainstorm ideas and things as well. And you get used to having that regularity, and you know, no issue is an issue, as it were. So cool. Okay, right. Anything else from anyone else, or are you quite happy to crack on?
We obviously run through our activities and events side. We look at CPD, which is annual refreshers, but then we also look at pre-course refreshers, and then risk assessment. We do a little bit of CPD in-house about how we write them, why we do them, how we check them, so on and so forth. And then, as you would expect, Sophia, we've got our kind of standardized procedure for our risk assessments. So whether you're in activities or training or in the office, it follows the same templates, the same format, the same kind of judgment.
That's great. And we are going to come on to risk assessments in a bit. So perhaps we'll delve into that in a bit more detail, if that's okay. But yeah, that's great. Really helpful. Cool. Okay. So prevention better than cure, as I said, and then lessons learned. I can't stress this enough. I know I've said it a couple of times, but it is really, really important. If you have an incident, look at it as an opportunity to learn as well. It may be that you've done absolutely nothing wrong and nothing needs to change, which is great. On the flip side, it may be that systems do need to change, or routers need to change, or the risk assessment needs to change, but it's a useful opportunity, so learn from it. Okay, so I said in one of the earlier slides that it's really important to tell your cover provider about an incident, and I'm going to throw this open to everybody. So why do you think it might be useful to tell us as your liability provider of an incident?
So you can like have our backs if someone tries to like sue us. You're already like ahead of the game, you know what's happened, and yeah, you can have our backs.
Absolutely spot on. That is exactly right, Emma. Thank you. So basically, whilst you might not phone up your motor provider and say, oh, I almost went through a red light today, it's very different with a motor provider. But with us, if you've had an incident or a near, or not so much a near miss, but if you've had an incident, we are pretty expert in ascertaining whether or not that's likely to become a claim. Also, we do monitor the environment out there as to whether or not people are making claims. And obviously, you know, there's been a lot of financial pressure with the pandemic, so we might see people having a go and trying a claim on as well. It's really important that we're aware of that. So if you tell us of your incidents, we can triage them, we can look at them, we can see if we think it's likely to become a claim. When you've got children involved, and I know you deal with children and young adults a lot, Parents, and I'm sure several of us here are parents, get very concerned about their lovely little child having had an incident, whether or not it's their fault, and will always look to try and pass the blame to somebody else. So we do see that quite a bit. So especially if you've got children involved, it's quite useful to tell us, and then we can look at it and we can say to you at the time, right, okay, let's get all the documentation together, let's get the statements from the people that were involved, let's get it now while it's contemporaneous, while you're aware of it, and while it's fresh in your memory, because it's fine doing it in 6 months' time, but your memory is going to have faded, and it's much better to get it there and then we're ready to go. So completely right. We're quite happy to put that time in and the hours in. It's not charged to you at all or anything like that, and it's just important that we've got all the information, so if it does become a claim, then we can deal with it and we're ready to go. We can hit the ground running, and if it doesn't become a claim, then it doesn't matter, but you know that you've got our support and you're protected. Cool. Okay, so what to expect if you do tell us. We've got a really small team at work. There's me, there's our account executive, there's 3 underwriters, there's a marketing lady, and then there's 1 guy in claims. So you will be dealing, or Dan or Danny, whoever, will be dealing with only 1 of 7 of us, which is great, and we really like that because we get to know you and you get to know us, and it's not just a faceless call centre when you call in. So Richard deals with our claims and will work really closely with you. And because of my background and expertise, I will work with you as well in case any claims need to be investigated or triaged. If you get a letter of claim in and you're not aware of the incident at all, and the first thing is that you get a solicitor's letter in, or you get a letter in from, or an email or a phone call from parents of a child, please tell us, please send it in. It's not an issue at all. But if you get a lawyer's letter, it's really, really important you send it to us without responding to it, because we will be able to deal with it on your behalf and sort that out. We've had a few members who've had a few issues when they've tried to respond to a legal letter, and it's caused a bit of problem. So please just send that in to us and we will work with you and we'll investigate it with you. We'll ask you for all the documentation that's relevant. We might ask you for photographs, we might ask for weather conditions, we'll ask for staff records, possibly training records, and then forms of consent and things like that as well. And then we'll work with you to hopefully defend any claim, or defend it, but also manage to sort of repel it immediately so that it then doesn't go any further down the line. I will just say, and I think I've probably mentioned this to Dan before, Danny, but we look at every claim on an individual basis. I used to work for a couple of insurance companies who would say it's worth less than £25,000 to settle it. We don't work like that, because that's no good for you at all. That means that your contributions go up and it doesn't do anything to protect your brand or your reputation. We do not want you to be seen as a soft touch where if a parent writes a letter in, they will just get a payout. It doesn't work like that, and that's not going to help you. So it doesn't matter how much the claim is worth. If there's a defence to be mounted and we can successfully defend the claim, we will. So hopefully that gives you a bit of reassurance about us looking after you as well. Right, so I just go back onto this. Any questions on that? Sorry.
I just have one question, Sophia. So you talk about the incidents and near misses.
Yeah.
What would you kind of class as your baseline that you would want to hear from us? Because if you were to speak with people online now, they might tell you that we have, say, 15 head bumps on our activity days where we've got 100 children on bouncy castles. What would you kind of class as your time to pick up the phone to you?
Sure, I'm really sorry. I should have said this, shouldn't I? That's a really, really good question. We usually say if it's anything that has to be reported via RIDOR, then we absolutely need to know. And that tends to be the baseline. We've got one member who's a big climbing wall in London, and they tell us everything. So paper cuts, the works, which is great. But, you know, bumped heads like that, fine. We have some members who say if we have to open the first aid kit, we'll tell you. I'm not so sure about that, because if you're just putting a graze, you know, a plaster on a graze, then obviously that's not that critical, is it? But I would say anything that's RIDDOR reported, absolutely, definitely. Anything that's serious, so broken arms, legs, that kind of stuff, or requires an ambulance, obviously, or requires a bit more detailed first aid, or you're not sure. We'd much rather be told, better to tell us and say, not sure, you need to know about this, and we can say, yes, we do, or no, we don't. So yeah, does that help?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, because it minimises how much we would send through to you. So
sure. Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. And I had a claims catch up with the claims chap and his boss last week, and we were talking about, I said, you know, when we go and see members and when we do training sessions and talks, we always say we like our members to tell us of any incidents. And Richard just went, oh, okay, that's a lot of work for me. And we're like, no, it's fine, because, you know, we help him triage it. But I just think, you know, if you're concerned about it, tell us, and we can work with you and we can support you. We don't want you worrying about it. Much better that we worry about it for you. So yeah, cool.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, just a sort of matter of interest. How many sort of incidents do you have? I know I can see everyone's faces. I don't know where you sort of work or how hands-on you are with, you know, the children that you have, but are you finding there's more incidents since we've reopened after lockdown, or do you think it's about the same or fewer?
What would you say, Ad?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. Not too much of a change, really. I think, yeah, exactly the same, really. I wouldn't say anything's massively changed.
Okay. Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. We found that looking across the different sectors of the industry, then some people have had far more incidents. We've had there's one of our members that works and does a lot of high rope courses and investigations and things, and inspections, sorry. And they said they've had lots of near misses and things like that staff have found, which is just.
Yeah, I think what helps us, Sophia, is because Adam, you just spoke to there, is on the front line with our activities, guys, is that Emily and the team, although we've been through a pandemic, has invested a lot of time and energy into refreshing and upskilling and keeping in touch with staff and making sure that they're able to hit the ground running almost, as opposed to being put in a bit rusty and a bit static. So I think that might be why we're still just seeing the occasional bump here and there rather than anything serious.
That's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah. And Adam, sorry, I'm going to ask you a question direct now. Have you found that you've got the same level of attendance at the you know, as pre-pandemic? So you've got the same sort of numbers and the same type of person that's coming to the courses?
Yeah, I think it all depends on what we're offering and what like the actual provision is for and who it's for. But yeah, again, I don't think numbers have changed very much either. I think it's very similar to what it was for. Potentially even a little bit more because you know, more people are trying to get involved in more things because they've had quite a lot of time away as well.
Yeah.
So if anything, it might have been a little bit more or different people actually, I think, to what we've had before.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Okay. And I don't know who is the best person to answer this question. Might be everyone. We've also had incidents of members saying that they've had problems recruiting staff. How's your staff retention been? Has that been, Emily smiling, has that been really difficult? Because I know people are saying, oh, it's Brexit, but we've had a few members who've said we can't get instructors from abroad because of the travel restrictions. And ordinarily we'd have people coming from the Southern Hemisphere during our summer, but also a lot of staff have said, do you know what? I don't want a seasonal job anymore. I want to go and be a driver for Amazon because I'm guaranteed a job and I'm guaranteed that. Have you had issues like that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very much so. We were all right during like the summer, and then it's now hit us probably the hardest because we've got more regular work and everyone's changed jobs, careers.
Yeah.
Don't want to do it anymore. It's very much a problem for us at the moment.
And do you think that you'll recruit from, say, colleges and universities? Do you think you'll do something like that, or apprenticeship courses, or how are you kind of?
Yeah, so we recruited through summer, we recruited through like sixth forms and colleges, went down that route. So we spent a lot of time in local schools. And then from now we are going to be recruiting in like the university. I think that's at the moment is the best route for us, because anything else doesn't seem to pick up or work at the moment.
Yeah. I've got my eldest is just about to go to university next week, so yeah, I think they're probably a really good cohort to grab, aren't they? You know,
Definitely.
They are. I think with Emily leading on the activities whole department and the strategy that we do have in place as well, we're looking at almost growing our own staff through, and that's something which is it's the long game as opposed to the quite quick, which is where we are targeting the 15-year-olds and the possibly just pre-16, where we can offer them training courses and that additional part-time or volunteering, and then as they go through the years and become more experienced and more confident, then hopefully they're working themselves into a more of a permanent role. Within the training side of the business, there is similar kind of difficulties, but with the training it's very much a qualifications kind of situation as well. And you can't just be a kind of a somebody who just walks in and expects to be able to do a few hours here. You have to be kind of a more 9 to 5 kind of person for the training department. We also have several people from the office and from the main office, business support, MIS, in the meeting as well, Sophia, where I might be wrong in saying this, but correct me, Chelsea, if not, but we seemingly have been able to recruit quite strong staff in that area. Whether that is something that is, again, whether it's because it is much more of a kind of a focused role and more security in that position, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that apprenticeships and that in-house training is going to be the way forward. I've seen it in several places now, and I think there's a lot of children that don't want to go to university with all the costs and everything, and if they can get a qualification with a good employer and stay with them and have a career, I think that's going to be really, really attractive. So yeah, fantastic. Good. Okay, so I move on. Any other questions on that, or are we okay? Right. So what to expect? I think we've sort of covered that. Tell us if you're not sure, tell us, and that's probably the best sort of rule of thumb. So I've talked about support and what we do, and also if you have a claim or an incident, it can be a very, very difficult time. Staff can panic, staff can get very overwhelmed, they can be very fearful, their daily work is impacted, and that can have repercussions on the whole team and across the business. I've talked about the impact on business and brand, and obviously we want to protect you, and we want to make sure that you're not seen as an easy target, someone that if you make a claim, it'll just get paid. Also, we have specialist advisors, so not only in-house, but if you do have an incident, then we will make sure that if a lawyer is required, we'll pick the right lawyer for that claim with specialist panels that we've got. And also we can seek specialist advice from experts such as engineers, you know, etc., depending on the type of claim. I've had weather experts in the past and that kind of thing. So, you know, there's a whole host of different experts that we can call upon. I've put counselling in there. Danny, I don't know how much of this you do sort of in-house, but obviously if you have an incident, especially if it's a serious incident, then counselling is something that is really, really useful. You probably have an HR scheme or something like that, but just it would be useful to know, have you actually been involved? Because I don't think I've seen any, well, I haven't seen anything in the last 4 years at least, but have you had any serious incidents where people have had to deal with them and you've been involved? Anybody?
I think regarding, if we were to be quite literal with work, so within the confines of work activity, no, we haven't. Things that have been attached to us. So, for example, one of our candidates but something happened to that person, unfortunately, outside of the course he was on. So yeah, we lent on some charity support there, offered out bereavement counselling and things like that. I think as you know, as at SSG, we want to be able to bring outside support in, but I think that the people you're talking to right now are our management and leadership team. We're quite a tight-knit group, and I think that we have, albeit maybe internal, we do have options for people to speak to each other and to speak to senior people. I think in the past and even currently, I'm probably the more independent person at a senior level that offers out time to be able to speak to people, especially as I'm kind of looking after the statutory elements of it. As part of our package, Amy, I'm not sure if we have that for additional counsel. Do we have any additional counselling? It's not a loaded question, it's just
yeah, we do have so under our PERT box subscription, there is an EAP, employee assistance program under that as well. So
yeah. I mean, it's more, I think the pandemic's just given rise to people being more aware of things, isn't it? It's just that if you do have an incident, it can have quite an impact, and people react very, very differently, and they'll probably react more differently now to how they would have done 2 years ago. I think it's really important that as the senior team, you work with your staff and make sure that they know that they are supported by you, and which I'm sure you would do, and just, you know, keep an eye on them. Yeah, it can be pretty scary if someone has an accident or breaks a limb or something in front of you. So yeah, and especially if they're sort of young members of staff as well. So cool. Okie dokie. Right. So documentation. Why is documentation important? Why do you think it's important? Somebody tell me. Who wants to go?
just choose a name, Sophia.
It provides an audit trail.
Oh, sorry, say again.
It provides an audit trail.
Yes, exactly. That's right. Documentation is important for several reasons. One of them is exactly what you said. The other one is that you can defend a claim with them. And there's nothing more helpful when you're standing up in court than to be able to produce the document to the judge, a contemporaneous document that shows that you've got all your systems in place and that you did everything that you are saying that you did. And it shows good health and safety track record. So I've listed some things here that you would need to produce. This is what you'd need to send to us if you've had a claim, but this is what we would also use to defend the claim. So it's worth knowing about this now so that you're prepared, basically, and you can make sure that you have these documents in place should you ever need to produce them. Danny, remind me at the end to say grab file in case I forget to say grab file, and I'll go through the grab file
Yeah,
bit
sure, not a
that
problem.
you and I talked about. So I've put risk assessments there. Who's involved here in writing the risk assessment? Anybody? Yep.
The majority
cool.
of people
all of us, I think.
Great. And do you have separate activities that you write the risk assessments for, so it's pertinent to the area that you're working in, to your experience in those? Yeah, cool. Okay, that's brilliant. So obviously we need the risk assessment. There was a Court of Appeal case several years ago that said just because you don't have a risk assessment doesn't mean that you're going to be liable. However, the first thing a judge will look for is a risk assessment to make sure that you've looked at the activity, you've identified the risks involved, and you've put a system in place to minimise or eliminate those risks. Not every risk can be eliminated, but as long as you've taken it down to the lowest possible common denominator, then that's what they need to see. And that's your duty as an employer and as a provider of the activities to the public. SOPs, standard operating procedures, quite a lot of businesses have those in addition to the risk assessments, and those SOPs might then refer to the risk assessment as well. Is that what you guys do? Yep, okay. And staff qualifications and training records, really important. it's fine saying we provide this activity for this young group of children and this is our risk assessment, but you need to make sure that your staff deploying that activity are qualified and have the up-to-date training and the correct certification. And I'm sure, looking at Amy, if you're the HR aspect of it, Amy, yeah. So I'm sure that you make sure that everybody has those and regular sort of CPD, Danny's talked about that earlier, and accreditations, etc., etc. So that's good. Maintenance and equipment checks. I know, who is it that deals with the mobile climbing wall? Emily. Hi, Emily. Right. So you'll know the type of checks that you have to do. So when you put it out, you check it and it's all fine. And do you document that? Do you have a tick sheet or anything that you document? Adam's nodding at me. Yeah.
Yeah, we have quite a bit of documentation for the wall that we use in that one, all in one place.
Great. I know it can be a real pain when you have to fill it in, but it is fantastic when you can stand up again in court and wave a piece of paper and say, this is the check they did before the activity and everything was absolutely fine. So there wasn't a defect and no, the holes weren't spinning because we checked them. Okay. So equipment checks as well, obviously. Do you do any, do you use sort of carabiners and things like that, harnesses and... Yeah, okay. So what kind of, Adam, what kind of checks do you do on those? Do you do like a daily check or monthly check or?
Yeah, so the wall, we check it before it's going out to any sort of activity day or it's going anywhere. So that's something that we do. We check it when it comes back in, all the equipment when they come back in as well. And I know Emily also takes it off for like a service as well, at some point as well, Emily, don't you? So yeah, it's regularly checked before and after.
Yeah, I think the after is really important as well, because then you can sort of call it back in and say it was fine, and if you've got a document to produce to say that, then that's fantastic. So never underestimate the power of those checks and everything. And as I say, they might be a pain when you're doing them, but really they are very, very important. Do you have them as a paper copy, or do you have them electronically, or do you scan them in if they're paper? How do you store them?
They've just been paper copies. That's what we have, and then we have them in our office, so in a file behind me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And so there's a question I get asked quite a lot, and you probably all know the answer to this. So forgive me if I'm telling you what you already know, but we do get asked quite a lot. How long do we need to keep forms for? How long do we need to keep records such as that and consent forms? I would say that obviously. You've got 3 years from the date of an incident within which a claimant can make a claim. It's the date of the incident or knowledge that the injury arose from that incident. Dealing with children, you've got until their 21st birthday. So that can be a significant period of time. If you've got like a 7-year-old, for example, you've got 14 years. I would say that you would usually know either at the time or very soon afterwards if you've got a child involved in an incident about an incident. So either the parents or the school or whoever it is or the carers will tell you that they've been injured. So you can then pull out that record. I would pull out the records that you've got that you keep in the file, make an extra copy of those, keep them in the main file, but put them in a separate folder for this incident or that claim so that you can keep them separately. You know you've got all the documentation together and it doesn't get lost. And I would say that, you probably don't need to keep them for more than 4 or 5 years because you should know about any incident. But I don't know, what's your system? Do you just keep them all until the filing cabinet's full, or do you scan them in?
Yeah, I've been here 8 years and I don't think we've thrown anything away.
Okay. I mean,
we are aware of the 21 rule for the kids, especially as we have like a few month-old swimmers and things like this that happen. The digitalization of our forms, there is changes happening, but it's low down on the list because the process is working at the minute, so there's no point changing it at the minute.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, as long as you've got space, then that's fine. And as long as nothing happens, like you have a fire or anything, and you presumably they're in a fire retardant cabinet, Adam, please.
Yeah, they're all stored correctly and off-site, actually, off-site.
Super. Okay, they are pretty important, and if you can put your hand on one of these, it can make the difference between a successful defence and not. Okay, statements. So we would want to take statements from the relevant personnel, so that would be the staff, the instructors, etc. If there has been an incident. It's a standard thing. I would either do it over the telephone or probably 9 times out of 10 it's much better to come and see somebody, but it just depends on, you know, how we are with lockdowns and things like that. But we'd want to get evidence as soon as possible. But also, if you're not sure whether it's going to be a claim, there is no problem in taking statements from staff, just to record the details, to get the salient facts, especially if you think that there might be a dispute on what happened. It's really useful to get the instructor to say exactly what happened at the time and just have that recorded and dated. Please stress to your staff that they're not in trouble, unless obviously they've done something they're in trouble. But you know, it's this is to help you and to help your insurers to defend a claim. So it's just a factual statement of.
Quick question on that, Sophia. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is there any weight in it being in their own writing, their own words, or do we annotate for them, or is there any difference?
They can write it out.
I think we just asked them to make a statement and hand it in.
Yeah, that is absolutely fine, but read it at the time and make sure it's got everything in it. That's no problem at all. Yes, it probably is better if it's in their own handwriting, but equally, if it goes to court, it's going to be drafted either by us or by the lawyer after questions to the person. Obviously, you get a chance to read it and change it. You know, it's your evidence, it's got to be factually correct. But yeah, I mean, if they can make a statement at the time, but just make sure it's got all the salient facts in it, and that they're not saying things like, oh, I don't know, oh my goodness, if only we had more money, we could have prevented that accident, you know, that kind of thing. Just make sure it's just factual about it, and not blaming, unless it's completely the claimant's fault. So, you know, the boy was told not to jump off this and he jumped off it, or what have you. Okay, right. CCTV, that can be really, really useful. I don't know if you, I know you're dealing with children and stuff, so I don't know how much CCTV you would have, if any at all, but for claims in car parks and stuff like that, that's always been quite useful. Photographs, if you have an incident, take a photograph, take a photo of the climbing wall, take a photo of you know, what the weather was like. I was constantly amazed when I was a lawyer that people used to say, oh, it was wet and awful and, you know, dangerous, and there was a massive pothole, and then you'd get the photograph and there was absolutely nothing at all, and it was a bright sunshiny day. So don't be afraid. Everyone's got a phone with a camera on it now, apart from my mother. So you know, snap a few photos. You can save them digitally and it's quite easy. So you know, don't be afraid of that. Obviously, I would say if you've got someone that, you know, has just broken their arm, I wouldn't be snapping away until you've dealt with them and looked after them. They obviously have to come first, but as soon as you can, after you've dealt with them and the first aid and everything, then obviously, you know, just get as much contemporaneous evidence. Right, grab file. I talked to Danny about this when we were having various discussions, and I've always recommended to people that you have a grab file. A grab file is the folder that if you have an incident, you go to, and all of you know where it's kept, and your staff know where it's kept, and you have in that, in fact, Danny, I don't know if you wanted to, you can always send around that the file that I sent, but basically you have a sheet with a list of questions of what you need to do, because you might panic and you might forget things, and it's just easier to work off a list and say, have I got the risk assessment tick? Have I taken, you know, take details of the witnesses, and then there's a separate witness form asking them for details, name, mobile phone number, email, so that you can keep in touch with them, and a brief statement of what was said. So I don't know if that's something that you are thinking.
Yeah, we're already looking at it within the activities department, where myself and Emily spoke the other day, and we're looking at that. And we're looking at it as a proactive document, as a grab file as well. So not just as in a guide for when something goes wrong, but like you've already talked about, that collective important document, signing off, signing in, almost that for that period of time. So then we can archive the whole of that in file. It'll just work much better if we standardize that. But yes, the physicality of a grab file sitting in Emma Graham's office will be very much what you're talking about now, because it very rarely, if at all, will be needed. Whereas the activities, it's a bit more regular.
Yeah. And it's great that it's not needed, and that is absolutely fine. But just make sure it doesn't gather dust. Make sure that you go through it and like an annual basis or on staff induction, that they know what to do. And also succession planning. If you've only got one person that knows where it is and knows what's in it, that's no good. Make sure it, it's spread around so that people do know and can see it. Yeah. Okay. Cool. If anyone needs any advice on that or wants to talk about it or isn't sure, then please just shout, not a problem. And you can always contact me after this. Danny's got my details, but they're on the slides as well, so please feel free. You're one of our members and we're just here to help you, so anybody. And I said know where your documents are, so I'm sure you all know where your documents are. I don't need to tell you, but you would be surprised that people don't know where their risk assessments and things are. Just going back to the risk assessments point, sorry, one thing I should have mentioned is how often do you update them?
So we have a standard annual practice, but for several, if not most of our activities and training, it's done when anything new is happening. So for example, we might go into a new venue or set up a new course cohort. We do it then. Likewise with Emily and the team, they might do a day by day kind of thing. So the activity itself is quite standardized risk assessed, but then the participants would be different or the weather conditions would be different. And then more stable things like the office or our meeting rooms and things like that, they're just looked at annually. Yeah. Apart from the obvious, which is if something is a near miss or has gone wrong, then we kind of dig it out and we go from there. Yeah.
That's perfect. It's exactly the right answer. It's great. So I'm really pleased that you're all doing that, and that's superb. Okie dokie. Right. So we talked a little bit about lessons learned earlier. And these are just the main headlines as to what you can, if you do have a near miss or an incident, look at it as a learning opportunity as well. So you can avoid a recurrence because you'll investigate it and you'll look at what went wrong, if anything, and how you can perhaps prevent that in future. It might be a really useful element of staff training. You might want to have a day where you say, right, this is what we had happen here, so let's look at it, let's brainstorm it, let's work through it. We do have a couple of members where they have a day each year and they do fatality day or serious incident day, where they imagine that they've had a serious incident or fatality and they take all the staff through it so that they know what to do. We've got something called a retentive brain, where if our brain has had a situation occur before, it will deal with it in a much easier way. So if you have something that happens to you for the first time, your brain will say, oh, what do I do? I don't know. And it'll go into its back catalogue. And if it hasn't happened before, it hasn't got anything to use as sort of how do I cope with this. If you've gone through an incident and you've trained staff and you've brainstormed it and you talked about it, then your brain will say, oh, I've dealt with this before, and you'll deal with it in a much better way. You've got a back catalogue. I hope that's kind of making a bit of sense. So that is a really good idea as to why it's useful to take staff through things. Obviously, you don't want to frighten people, but it's more about being proactive so that you don't need to be reactive. Reviewing methods, again, we've talked about that, is everything working properly? Could you change anything? Have you got the right staff, rotas, numbers, etc., etc. And I mentioned the culture of reporting near misses, just really important so that staff don't feel concerned about saying if there has been an incident or an accident. You can learn as a business, and that really helps your staff and the whole sort of business aspect and your camaraderie. And you can learn, obviously we learn as a sector, and it protects your brand and it protects the industry at the end of the day, because that's, we want to make sure that people want to come and do activities, don't we, without like fear. Any questions on those?
No.
Nope. Okie dokie. Right, so We're almost there, really. So just the summary. So be proactive. Ensure all your procedures are in order. I know you guys are tip top on all of this, so I'm sorry if it's been a bit of a teaching you how to suck eggs, but you know, I think that it's quite useful having a review of everything anyway. So know where your documents are, training of staff, regular reviews, and encouraging the culture of near misses. So sorry I've banged on for almost 50 minutes about all of that, but I hope you found it useful, and more than happy to have a discussion about anything or questions. Or
I think it's invaluable, Sophia, because it's great that we're kind of aligning, and things that we have been doing previously is meeting your needs if it was to go wrong. The one thing that I obviously want to keep doing and pushing on and stressing is that it doesn't become flippant and complacent. It's not a kind of one of them things. They're not, because actually we don't want it ever to happen.
yeah,
but
of course,
if it does, we are screwed if we've not got the history showing that it is being looked after and it's in place. So we are tightening up on a couple of things over the last 18 months, 2 years or so, which has put us in this strong position where we are meeting as a collective, as leaders. We are trying our very best to centralize the filing of everything, because we are so diverse and so fast paced and moving, to make sure that we don't miss the needs of the office and miss the needs of the kind of the car park and all those kind of things, which could be seen as quite grey in comparison to the archery and the climbing walls and the multiples in the training centres. So it's trying to make sure that everybody on this platform understands that they are part of a role and they have aspects, even if it doesn't happen every year or if it happens every day, we're still part of that. And the awareness of what you've just confirmed really is really good. It's really invaluable.
Cool.
So
Thank
in the
you.
nicest possible terms, Sophia, hopefully we won't all meet it like this until
Absolutely.
we do another refresher. But I'm sure we will touch base with probably some stress testing stuff. So as we get, if we try anything new or if we go in a different direction, to have the confidence that we could pick up the phone to you and see if we're all okay.
Absolutely, anytime. My details are on there. I think you've got the slides, haven't you, Danny? So if
I do,
anybody
yes,
wants
I'll
to
have the slides. Yeah.
then
I can.
obviously.
What will happens as a standard, guys, is the recording goes onto our YouTube channel, which is obviously protected, Sophia. We then put the PowerPoint on our Padlet as well, and everybody's attendance will be registered on People HR for CPD.
Okay, that's great.
But if anybody has any questions that they want to ask at a later date, if you ping it into me, and if I don't know it, obviously I'll send it through to you, Sophia, and try and collate them if we get many.
Yeah.
Just
And
so.
not a problem at all. And again, you know, if you want me to come and see you, then please do. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you for your time.